to do such a good job. And I think that the gentleman yesterday had, well, there were two of them on the screen, and I think she was answering those questions. And then he would answer them live, oh, yes, I used to use that particular plan or platform, or he knows all the words because he's been doing things for decades. He went from radio into this kind of a realm. And so, and I thought, oh my goodness, he's presenting this great information, but everybody wants to know, how did you make that slide? Oh, I like the way you're over in the
Magic.
corner.
Right. Right.
Oh, so I learn by snooping, I guess, and I can only learn by repetitive, et cetera, et cetera. So some of you probably thought, I am just going to have to say yes so that this person will, because I tend to jump up and down. It's like I was given LinkedIn to learn, and I jump up and down, and I'm like, oh, come on to my show. I think what I saw in your post is really interesting. But I started with Nancy. I mean, I will just say it right off the spot here. And by the way, yes, I do see you, Crystal. I am so grateful that we have a full complement this morning on this voyage. Nancy, I remember her at home. We had connected with each other through the Global Tea Break. And I remember her saying,
Connecticut, or is that before we? I think
you were still up north. You hadn't moved. I don't think you had even packed yet. And I said, I have a concept. And you said, just a moment, honey, we'll have dinner in an hour.
Did I say that?
So I can't see him. He's off. I know he's camera shy anyway. And I just was like, oh, this person shouldn't invest an entire hour on me. Oh my goodness, there are so many more big things to happen. Nancy May, Scott and I pushed submit yesterday on the book that you encouraged me.
Oh, it's so great.
Just yesterday. So this is years ago that you gave me time, and you made these suggestions, and you're like, I think it should be as a journal, not just a reading book. I think that, there was one other thing that you suggested. I'll think of it later, when we're done. And so I kind of hesitated for a while to invite you into this, because I thought, she's already given me so much.
Oh, no.
But that's the crazy thing.
We're part of a community. That's what it's all about.
That's right. And you gave me all these. So you are mentioned in 2 spots in that prompted journal.
Well, you'll help me. You're helping me now, so that's good.
So it was a worthwhile investment. My husband put it down at the bottom. I never know what I'm going to say when I come on to these things, except hello, good morning, tell me about yourself. But as I have your book right over here, oh yeah, you can see it. As I have your book here, I knew, ding, 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 twin books. I knew that
and the podcast.
I could let you know that I wasn't awake yet, because my husband starts doing stuff at 6 a.m. I was awake, but he said, I just wanted to come in and go, it's live. It's live on Amazon. It's happening. I ordered a box. So that was the one I really wanted to write. I kind of practiced on some others. So one when I was 62, and one more recently at 63. But this is the one that was in my caregiver bag when I was a hired caregiver. and it turned out to be almost 100 different homes where I really got to know the families. And this is the one that I wanted to write. As I listened to the adult children of aging parents and what was on their mind and what they wished and how they thought about their own futures. And that's the book I wanted to write for them, because people like Nancy and people that are on the screen right now are taking care of people as they hit those challenges. So I'm done. We are 5 minutes in. Nancy, why do you have a book in your hand that says 911? And that's not 9/11, that's 911.
Now? You want me to say that?
Sure.
Okay. Why do I have a book in my hand, How to Survive 911 Medical Emergencies, because it's something that my husband and I wrote a number of years ago in, looking at what we can do to provide support to those of us that are caring for aging parents, a loved one. It could even be a child, because if you've got kids, chances are you're gonna be in the ER at least once in the course of their childhood lives, right? Anyway, I'm trying to figure what's the thing that you do a lot more than you realize and you're afraid to do? And that's dial 911, right?
Mm.
When you need help.
Should I? Shouldn't I?
There's a lot of fears. So, Brittany, you're an emergency room physician. You probably see that all the time. People come in and they panic and they don't know what to do, and should I have called? Or, they drive themselves in or they drive somebody else in as opposed to calling a paramedic or a first responder to be of help. And it's okay to call, because those professionals are there for a reason in our community, and we should use them as an asset to what we're
Mm.
doing, and especially in caring for an aging parent or a frail spouse or, like I said, even a child. They're the ones who are going to make sure that we arrive at the hospital alive,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, well said. Definitely use 911 when it's an emergency. I see both sides of it. I see people who probably shouldn't have driven themselves. I'm asking, why did you not call an ambulance? And then I also do see inappropriate use of ambulance
Sure,
services
sure.
as well. People
Sure.
sometimes think that they'll get seen faster if they come by ambulance, and that's not always the case.
Mm.
With the ERs now these days, sometimes we do have to put ambulance patients in the waiting room. So that is one myth that I think people should not let sit in their head. But yeah, call
But it's
911 if you need them.
Yeah,
Yes.
and there's so much
Mhm.
complexity in the 911 system. How do you talk to a dispatcher? How do you make sure that the right person arrives? Do you get, a medical care versus a doc versus a fire department to come? There's a lot that goes on, even admissions in the ER. How do you get better support in the ER? And it's not just because you arrive there first, right? It's
Mhm.
typically based on the priority of the emergency at the time. And so there's a lot goes, including we've got, how to get out faster, how do you get discharged faster, how to call 911 when the medical system or the 911 system is down, and it does go down, and then what to do in case of natural disasters if you can't get a hold of emergency support. So there's a lot there.
Oh, and am I remembering right, Nancy, that your husband would know about those emergency calls, and so together you made that book because he's got a lot of experience there?
He was a first responder as a police officer in a previous life. And when I first started taking care of my parents, I thought there really needs to be a first aid book for seniors, for elderly people. And I looked at the first aid
Mm.
first, the Red Cross first aid book. I thought, there's no way on earth I'm going to be able to do this. One, I'm not a doctor, and there's so much that goes on that's different in an elderly, more frail parent or person than there is. It's just in the first aid, American First Aid Red Cross book. And honestly, I think that book needs to be rewritten and updated to today's time and even to the generations, an older person, because there is difference.
Oh, yes.
It looks like it's not that long of a book. I'd be happy to read it.
Oh, it's
Oh,
so
mine? Yeah.
practical. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
if you do
it's
this, you'll
designed
be
very
ready.
simply, very easy. We go to howtosurvive911.com. You can get a free file of life. Everybody says it's 110 pages long,
Yeah.
including the notes in the back. So it was short, sweet, to the point. There's not a lot of stories. It's a
Markers
how
in
to.
there.
It's, keep it simple, stupid, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't need to be complex.
Well, and you're stupefied in the moment. So
Yeah.
you've got the embarrassment factor. You're like, do I have an ambulance pull up? The neighbors will be out there in their bathrobes. They'll be
They're all
wondering, oh my
talking.
goodness. And what's going on? Is this getting worse really fast, or just feel like it's getting worse? Just all of that. You are all being cheered on and championed by Gary
Yeah.
Solomonson. Thank you so much that you are listening. My husband and I are still binge watching Frasier again for the how manyth time. And he's like, I'm listening,
Oh
and
my
so
God.
is Gary. Awesome. And then Laura from Florida, Laura Morrison, heard me say what I was doing last decade. And she is also a caregiver. So I would say that I know I don't think I've been on screen with her anywhere. So I'll have to find out some of her stories. I really try not to put people together because I think they'll have this in common. I just say, what day are you available? Hey, these people have signed up. Would this be good for you, etc.? I guess I like for you to get the chance to know each other ahead of time, but it isn't necessary because this really is a picnic table. We've started talking about 911 emergencies. We've talked about aging parents, kids, books, becoming authors, why, how, and more people are coming over, and so we're all at a picnic table. Um, Crystal, you are also a very involved person. I don't know how much in person, how much online. So tell us some of what you do.
Well, thank you. I'm the founder of the Virtual Brain Health Center, and we have the good fortune of providing education, awareness programs, and services across the world and across the United States, launching from a very modest grant project where we targeted my local community of Northeast Ohio. And I will say the power of Zoom and LinkedIn in helping translate the complex science into actions that all of us can take to build a better brain. And so we're in the good fortune. We work with people under aging care. We have a school brain health initiative we help support for adolescents up through high school as well. And so we are really just out talking brain health with just about anyone who wants to have that conversation and listen, and serve as a referral source as well to other practitioners, providers, agencies, organizations that can help someone navigate their lifelong journey for better brain health.
And I always like every age, any age. Why would you ignore your brain health until you're thinking, am I having memory issues? That would be like, well, I plan to be on that team this fall, so I'll start working out the day before.
Let me
Oh,
try out
that's
for
going
the
to go
Olympics
well.
tomorrow.
And I had the good fortune of spending more time with my niece over the summer and observed her at the age of 5, asking for things about her own brain care, like quiet time, asking for a cold wash rag on a hot summer day. And I admit I learned a lot from her. She was my little mentor and teacher of what happens along our aging continuum where we stop asking for those things or giving ourselves the permission because we just think, I don't have time to wash my face. I have 50 more things to do right now. And she inspired me. And we have a book coming out this fall, a kid's book about brain health, to have kids start that conversation with the goal. They're reading it with their parents, their families, their grandparents, their teachers. So we're going to start that conversation with everybody.
I
Can I
love
interrupt
that.
there, Crystal? I want to share that a friend, and she was a caregiver and helped me with my own parents. Her grandson said, "Would you please, in high school, take away my phone? It's too stressful." He went through a lot of emotional challenge, and it was interesting to see how he knew well enough at a certain point to say, "This is not healthy for me."
Championing that. Ani Papazian. She was on. This was like, met her 2 days later. She came on. What I'm remembering is pain that she refuses to allow someone to be told, well, you're getting old, so you got to expect this pain. You just got to cope with it. She's out to, I mean, she's been doing this for decades, out to prove that wrong, that just because you have a certain number attached to your name doesn't mean, well, you have to expect that. And you just got to, it's just going to be part of your life. So she's also championing us. Hello, lovely ladies. Excited to hear the wonderful information you'll be sharing. Yay, Ani. And Laura reminded me, yes, I used to see her, that little circle flashing on Clubhouse, and that's where we first crisscrossed. So I'm just so grateful that you scoped us out today. Susan, you're probably the newest to me on the screen. I'm like, yay. And a lady whose first name is Wen, W-E-N, she works with Medicare. That's her employment. And she said she's creating, a resource spot. And her response was something about, I'm really looking at dementia and these things. And I'm like, oh, you would, if you can't watch tomorrow live, then please do watch the replay, because we've got some people that speak to that. Both you and Brittany have dementia right at the top of your profile. So read to connect.
Yeah, reading to connect.
Reading.
Before I even say a little bit about what it is, let me just throw out my freebies. That once a month, I give a free workshop online to anybody who would like to learn what to consider when they're thinking about creating reading material that's accessible to someone living with dementia. And then the other thing that I offer is, if anybody's interested in our age and dementia friendly books, I offer them an ebook to look at and get a sense of at no cost. Okay, so I wanted to say that just in case people heard some of the recording and then got pulled away. So Reading to Connect is based on the premise that most people living with dementia can still read, that the capacity to read is deeply rooted, and it takes an awful lot to pull that out and make it inoperable. Now, aphasia, which is a language problem, that's something different. So we're going to put that aside. But most cognitive changes that people experience, whether it's due to dementia or age or delirium or depression, usually to some degree, there's a functional ability to read that's there, but it's like a pearl, and it's hidden by all the muck of cognitive changes, problems with simultaneous processing, working memory, sustained attention, selective attention, um, uh, visual processing, oculomotor control, all those things. Dementia is wreaking havoc with those things. And those things are interrelated to the ability to read. But what if we could take all those impairments and sort of put them aside and compensate for them so that they were put in the background and bring the ability to read right up there in the forefront and let it breathe and let it be used and let it be celebrated. So when we think about dementia care in general, the best kind of dementia care is celebrating what the strengths, they call them preserved strengths of somebody, and compensating for the difficulties. So that's the essence of Reading to Connect. Is we use a Montessori approach. Maria Montessori is, probably you all know, famous educator from the 19th century in Italy. And in a very small, tiny nutshell, she believed that if you provided the student with accessible materials, an environment that's friendly to them, then the teacher's role is would no longer be that important, because the student would be engineering and leading their own learning. So I'll wrap up and say that's the philosophy that we have, whether people live in long-term care, memory care, assisted living, whether they're at home, whether they're in a day center, whether they're visiting their library. If we give them materials that interest them and that are accessible, like an age and dementia-friendly book, and we are very mindful of the environment, then staff and caregiver assistance becomes not as much needed.
That is so beautiful. I mean, I just want to jump in for Christine a second. I'm going to open my mouth. I think that this is such an important aspect of what you're dealing with, Susan, just personally, because so many people believe that if somebody has dementia, Alzheimer's or Lewy body or something else, that I'm going to use the term, they become stupid, right? Not a technical clinical term, but that they're not intelligent anymore. And that's not necessarily true. In fact, I think people with dementia or some sort of cognitive impairment sometimes are smarter in figuring things out than the rest of us, because they see the world a little differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, they'll come out with something and like, holy cow, why didn't I figure that one out?
What was the last thing you said?
I said, holy cow, they'll come out with something and you think, holy cow, how come I didn't come up with that and figure it out, right?
Yeah, and the reading is, we think about reading as something you do alone. You have a big book with lots of words and it's silent and it's alone and it's up there in the head. But what we talk about is changing that concept of reading and thinking about reading as a social thing, thinking about reading as a support to expression. So for instance, we have books on high interest things like dogs and cats and sports, but we also have books on what I call 20th century issues or cultural topics, whether it's the Korean War or the Japanese American story or Jewish reflections or civil rights, of course, gay rights, all those books. And what we found is that people who don't speak a lot, because they have this accessible text with abundant, carefully chosen images, they start to speak about these really important topics. And just like you said, Nancy, the staff people, especially younger, they're just blown away because all of a sudden this person has become their elder who knows things and has experienced things and to whom they should listen.
There's a richness there that's not lost, right?
Respect. Oh, I'm just so as you started to talk, boom, in came Wen. She's like, I'm here. So and she explained better, of course, what she does with Medicare. But I mean, we were doing this, I think just yesterday, just like, what is this about? Oh, do you have? So Wen came in, so she is gathering. Michael Holt and Russ Hedge have both popped on. Russ is less than an hour north of me, and Michael is about another hour north there. And my husband has actually seen Michael face to face. And Michael, that was so nice of you to come to my neck of the woods and be supportive. But he's an amazing person. We got to know him better at the last, I think, 2 global tea breaks ago or something. It's a once a month thing. Global tea break. I should say Alan Hennessy over in Ireland, my husband, D. Scott Smith, motivational listener, they met each other years ago and said, hey, we should try to make an online community. And then the world shut down. No talk about any of that was happening when these guys were going, let's see what happens. And boy, people are just coming in just to go, oh my goodness, my life is so affected. And they brought in all of their expertise, just like you are all bringing in your expertise right now. But Susan, make sure you watch the replay because Gary Solomonson said, you gotta contact me. And he gave you where to go to contact him. So, Brittany, you've just been so kind in your corner of the screen, and here you are, a medical doctor. Do you specifically work in the ER? Is that a place you gravitate to because of maybe the characteristics of a person that arrives there? Are you more a teacher of medical things that I don't know? What are you all about? I know I was
Yeah.
excited that you were going to carve out this hour.
Yeah. So I'm an emergency medicine physician. So, after medical school, you have to pick what you're going to do. And emergency medicine is its own career. So I did a residency training in that. And now I've been an attending, practicing for about 6 years in the ER. So I've been working in the ER for almost a decade now between training and being an attending.
Yeah.
And I basically, I got really frustrated by seeing people really struggle to make medical decisions in the moment on behalf of their aging loved one, essentially. And it's not just people living with dementia, but anyone who's aging. And in my opinion, I think that we're doing advanced care planning a bit wrong. I think there's kind of an over reliance on the documents like living will and 5 wishes and advanced directives. As an ER doctor, a lot of that paperwork is not practical in the moment. And so what I really wanted to do was give people a way to figure out like what their goals are, what quality of life means to them, and then how do we translate that into the medical care that they receive, especially in emergency situations and in the hospital, because this type of care really can affect your quality of life on a day-to-day, depending on how you do, with how we treat you, but it can also affect the length of your life. And so these are big decisions that we have people make. And I think people can be better prepared for them. So what I champion is something called medical decision planning. And so I actually advocate that people learn about the medical conditions that they have and how those things can get worse in the future, essentially, how they can affect their quality of life, and then how those things are treated so that we can make sure that we're aligning treatment with what their goals are. Because what I find is that most of my patients really do value quality of life. And at a certain point, a lot of folks wouldn't want to have care that's primarily intended to keep them alive artificially. And I know it's a heavy topic, but I see it every single day in the ER. And for people living with dementia, unfortunately, all the different diseases that cause dementia, most people have progression of disease. And so it gets worse, and they're going to lose the ability to make their own decisions. And we know who is going to make medical decisions on their behalf. So I work with those people to help them come up with a plan ahead of the need of making medical decisions. So it's very, it's not preventative like what Crystal is working on, which I love. Total championing of that. Like, I love that idea. I'm super excited to be here and meet all of you wonderful humans. But yeah, so I mean, that's what I do, is really help people with the medical decision side of things. So I have a blog, and I have a free training and a free guide I just released. And then I also offer a course. That's my paid service that I offer for people who are making medical decisions.
Fantastic. It reminds me, what did I do? I went to the Gerald Conference at Oregon State University. One of the presenters was, they take 2 years to be case management president of the state of Oregon. And Marianne Casera was explaining the lengths that they go to as a person is leaving their hospital stay to do the same thing. It isn't preparation to go into surgery. It isn't preparation for end of life. It's, what are your goals?
Mm-hmm.
What is important to you? Is it important to you to leave the hospital or to stay there? Because that's going to, they can't stay there, but that's a discussion that they can have, and to listen to those who are going to be helping with the decisions or driving this in a time that's more difficult because they are a little bit confused on all their options, or they are heavily medicated. It's like, what is your goal to be able to walk your dog around the block? Then we need to look at getting a scooter. We need to look at getting you nearer your neighborhood rather than keeping you, downtown in something that's 8 stories high. All these things about the person. So I am so grateful that you got sick and tired of people coming in and thinking, I've got my paperwork here, I've got my advance directive or whatever, and in sick and tired of there not being that a bridge over that gap of,
Yeah.
but what about living? What
Mhm.
what is that? What, how do you, and I love that you want them to be informed, because that
Oh,
helps to quell fears, and that helps them to put both hands on the steering wheel and say, well, if that's the way it's going to be, then this. And like we were saying, a person even in dementia to go, well, if those are my options, I would rather do this. And it's like, Mom, Dad, wow, good. Now I know your wishes. I really know what's important to you right now. So,
Christine, may I ask a
love it all.
question?
Absolutely.
So, Brittany, I've got a question for you as it relates to emergency room situations. Let's say that you've got a family who's come in, or an emergency responder has come in the ambulance with a person who's had a major medical situation that is life-threatening, right? Now we're at the end of their life at a certain time, and the family is afraid to make that go, no-go decision. How do you have that conversation as a medical professional? Because from what I've seen, very few medical or doctors are equipped to have that conversation with the family in a sensitive way that helps them really think about what's next and how do they do that. I mean, we knew how to do it with our family, but even the doctor was a little shocked in some of our we used humor too because it was part of our family, and that's
Mhm.
how we did it, but,
Yeah, I think that I mean, it's very challenging. Obviously, there's family dynamics and what people's beliefs are and spiritually and all of that to kind of judge and kind of weigh in on. But, as a physician, for me, it's something that I really care about and am very passionate about. But people should be aware of what you're saying too, is that it's easier just to keep someone alive, to start aggressive care and move them through the system. It's easier to do that, to just do the standard of care than it is to actually stop and say, "Wait a minute, is this what this person would want?" And then contact the appropriate people, facilitate a discussion. Oftentimes, decisions have to be made very, very quickly. So, for me as a doctor, the way that I approach it is I ask the family, "I'm really concerned that your person is very sick. They're critically ill. I don't know if they're going to live." I am very direct about these things. And then I tell them, like, I would like to know what's important to your person, and let's think about making decisions for them, like speaking on their behalf as if they were able to assess this situation and weigh in, like what would they want to do. But the question, I just had a situation like this the other day. I had a patient that came in by ambulance who was he was actively dying, and his
mhm.
code status on his paperwork from his living facility said full code. He didn't have a do not resuscitate. And so I actually walked by the room and saw my colleague in there, saw this very sick older patient. And then I walked into the room and said, "What's going on?" And she said, "I think I'm going to have to intubate this guy and put him in the ICU. He's really sick." And I said, "Can I take care of him?" And then I went to my computer and I called his family and they answered. So we were able to have this whole conversation, and he actually did pass away in the emergency department. But
But
she
nobody reached out to the family or thought about reaching out?
we do, but this was like, 1 o'clock in the morning. It was a very busy shift. What if he didn't answer? I would have intubated this person. Like, I would
Mhm,
have had to put him on a ventilator. But the one thing that I ask people is, let's think about the way your person has been living recently before this medical emergency, because as medical professionals, sometimes we get blindsided by seeing the person suffering, seeing them so
mhm,
sick. We're like, "Oh my gosh, they're so sick. Why would they want to live like this?" But it's not about right now. It's about how they've been living recently. How would they judge their quality of life to be? And when I asked that question of his family, they said, "Oh, he wouldn't want to live like this anymore." And then I said, "Okay, well, I don't think we should put him on a ventilator and in the ICU. I think we should make him comfortable, because I have to be honest with you, I think he's actively dying." And then he did several hours later. So
mhm,
that's the lens that I go at these conversations from. But
mhm,
people, we have to do things differently, because it takes time to have that conversation, and these decisions have to happen immediately. Like, if they didn't answer the phone, I would have intubated him because of his paperwork. His paperwork wasn't accurate. It didn't reflect his goals of
mhm,
care. And so that translation, it's not there. And somebody
mhm,
wrote a comment about, these conversations should come from primary care. I totally agree. That's what I used to say all the time. And then you have to think about, what does primary care do? I mean, they have 15, 20-minute
mhm,
visits. There isn't the time to have these dedicated sessions to planning. And I think it's a huge gap in the healthcare system. I think that we need to give people more education that they can consume on their own time so they can become informed. And it's not medical advice. It's information you could find anywhere on the internet. It's just given to you by a physician that maybe has a relationship with you. So
yeah.
anyway, I could talk about this stuff for hours.
I'm an advocate that these conversations should happen throughout your lifetime.
Yes.
Because it's not something that should just happen at the end of life, but even
No.
when you're younger, because you never know what's gonna happen. And we had
100%.
a totally different situation with my mom who had a major brain aneurysm, and she
Mhm.
had dementia, and they wanted I was up north in Connecticut, I get the call, I'm gonna be there, like, ASAP, because the one thing I wanted was to make sure that mom did not pass alone. That was my primary thing, she wouldn't be alone. And I made that promise to my dad. But the doctor wanted to medevac her out and do brain surgery, and I said, "Absolutely not. No, you're not gonna do that on a 91-year-old woman who's frail and has cognitive issues." And
Mhm.
these were the discussions we had throughout our lives. So I knew, but I think it's, these are tough decisions and when they come, but if we have the conversations throughout our lives in not a morose way, but in one that, what do you want in life, in a positive affirmation, then I think we're more and easier for those of us who are there that are, I'll say, forced to make that final decision for somebody who can't.
Yeah.
Mm.
And for people living with dementia, it's not all about end of life either. All the medical decisions that we make can impact their quality of life. And it's really important, like considering whether or not someone should be hospitalized for routine, things even. They're just very important decisions. So and then that's something that I find people people avoid this topic because they don't want to talk about end of life, but it's the whole journey to aging. And I really feel like it's for anyone who's aging, but I've
It's
chosen to
quality of
kind of
life. It's not end of
yeah.
life.
Yeah. I've chosen to
Mhm.
spearhead working with people living with dementia just because we know those people can't, at some point, will not be able to make their own medical decisions. So,
I say every day
Mhm.
counts.
Yeah. Laura Morrison said that she would ask you a question, and it was when Proffery that stated take. So yeah, I'm going to keep Laura's up on the screen. Thank you to my hubby producer. It was when Proffery who said, Dr. Lamb, advanced care planning should start from primary care, and that's something you referenced a moment ago. And take many sessions for planning with family. Yes, ongoing. There isn't a person on the screen, and probably not a person in the chat column, or even people that are watching quietly, who would say, nope, you shouldn't talk about any of those heavy subjects until you are in the throes of being the rag doll in the mouth of a crisis. Then you can start talking about these things.
Yeah.
No one would plan to leave everything, but it does happen that people literally say, um, I don't think we need to talk about that at this point. Everyone seems fine. It's like, oh, everyone's fine. Great time to talk about it.
Grab a glass of
So
wine
there we go. Yes, make
or
make
champagne.
it an
Celebrate now.
event, make it, whatever, yes, that's why people are doing all sorts of things where the death cafes and things like that. It's like, let's just make it regular, because there are families who have been that way all the way through anyway. But Laura Morrison was saying, I would ask Brittany, how do you stay away from medical advice? Just education.
I think that what I do in my work is that I teach people all the options. I don't tell them what to do. I just talk about medical conditions like facts, I mean, this is how we diagnose things. These are what the symptoms look like. These are the treatment options. This is how this can get worse. So it's information that you can learn on the internet, but it's from what I do. I deliver it from my lens as an ER doctor. And I think I'm pretty good at breaking down these complex medical issues pretty quickly because it's what I do every day in the emergency department. I have to really establish a rapport with my patients. It matters to me that they can understand what's actually happening to them and that they feel empowered to make the choice that's best for them, no matter if it's a parent with a child or someone with an injury or someone who has chest pain and doesn't know if they want to stay in the hospital. I mean, so that's something that I'm passionate about. So yeah, I say it's not medical advice because I'm not telling them what to do. I'm just giving them access to information.
The doctor said, I can make this decision. I'm empowered. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, they're not saying this is what you ought to do. It's the only option, or this is the better option. You're saying there are options, and it is absolutely yours. Crystal, you embody the starting at any age where you can, like 5 years old, and talk about what's healthier for a brain and continue on. I forgot to ask you, is there a title for this book that's coming out for children?
Well, I appreciate the question. We're working with the Kids Co., which is a company that covers a whole lot of issues around social equity to mainstream topics. Today, we're talking about feminism, racism, sexism, all these quote unquote heavy conversations that adults don't think children can hold. So they now have created the tools and resources to empower children to have these challenging conversations. And so our book is just simply called A Kid's Book About Brain Health and following their format. And so we were excited that we can help, I think, build out their collection, and that we're working with them where they have topics like mindfulness, nervous system regulation, a lot of these tools, gut health, that we know are interrelated for our health and well-being, but starting this education early with our kids and helping them make decisions that can affect them lifelong. And I like to say we can always make small improvements in all of these areas, but recognizing and honoring that children are ready to have some of these conversations. They're capable and they ask questions. And even as Nancy generously shared her example of, they're telling us it's our job to figure out, what they're expressing. I thought a lot of times it comes to brain health and well-being. And hopefully we as adults can learn too that we keep those strategies and we just keep talking about how we're taking better care of our brains.
I look forward to when kids are like, hey, grown-ups, I've already covered this subject. I feel really good about talking about it. I've got this information. And the grown-ups are like, wow, I'm learning right along. Can you check out that book one more time, honey? And bring it home again and read it to me because you're doing really good at reading. What do I need to be doing? Oh.
Crystal, can I ask, do you have in as you study brain health and the effects, the relationship between reading and ongoing reading and
it's wonderful.
I always say that it's just when we get to a point for whatever reason where we can no longer read typical newspapers, magazines, and books, we enter into this literary abyss because there's pretty much only one format. And I just can't imagine that. And I can't imagine that that's taking away a whole way of abstracting and theorizing and imagining, right? Reading stimulates your imagination and your creativity. All that is gone if we don't offer people something else. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say in the last 10 years of working across the senior living campus, community-based services, I've always been the huge advocate that brain health is part of memory care. It's in the memory care and how it shows up. And I'm grateful for tools and resources like what you've created and provided, because I've always come from the program side. And so how do we program in active engagement and not passive engagement? Because we know if it's a loved one living with dementia or other chronic health conditions, it's very different of a day when you're bored and you're trying to go to bed versus if you spent a day mentally stimulated and you go to bed, how that helps other symptoms. So I'm a big advocate of using tools and resources like what you have to get at components of lifelong learning, which is reading. The expectation or the output is different. It's that active engagement piece. It's sparking those conversations. And it's not like we might be reading something to remember it. That's not the expectation anymore. But sometimes we leisure read too, right? We're doing it to pass the time, not with the intent of, I have to repeat this to the next person or, have this discussion in my book club. We can just create those moments that spark that really active engagement, and huge proponent of what reading can do and using the right tools and resources that people have to facilitate that engagement for people is so important.
I love that. And Reading to Connect offers programs for different settings, whether it's long-term care, libraries, places of worship, etc. And the program is basically a collection of books and training. We don't just sort of sell the books. It always comes with the training. But when we talk about long-term care, when we're in those settings, yes, we talk about you can have an activity, a calendar event where people are coming together, and we in our package we provide copies of the same book. So residents are sitting close in a Montessori based environment, and they each have a copy of the same book, and they're just organically talking and reading and helping each other, some with language, some without, just interacting with a real concrete thing that they know about, at least have, a lifetime of experience. Anyway, but then a big part of our training is how to integrate leisurely reading into the lives these people. Like, it doesn't have to be just a program Tuesday at 11, and all that, just that reading, leisurely reading, recreational reading, where they're in charge. They're deciding what to read, what to reread, when to go back, when to go forward, when to end it. They're in charge. They're engineering that experience of just wandering, right? Through the imagination.
Tools with training. Tools with, so here is the way that this will take that pearl up out of the murk and clean it off, and everyone benefits, including the people that are passing out the books and are initiating this. It's like, that was such an enjoyable time. There's a slight sound in the background, if you can all hear it, of like an ocean. And that is a wonderful reminder that each one of you is just going to take this moment to say how to get a hold of you, what it is that you have, that you're offering. A lot of you are doing training, you've got webinars, you do an open forum, question answer, you have things that people like Gary and Russ and Michael and Ani and Wen and Laura, and who am I forgetting, have been interacting with you today on screen. Others are listening, or they've gone to the other places where you can watch this. I think that Susan was live streaming this out to your YouTube. Is that what you were doing?
LinkedIn.
To your LinkedIn. So Susan, let's start with you. We'll go to Brittany, we'll go to Nancy, and Crystal, you'll finish us out with ways to get a hold of you. I'm just letting you know that down at the bottom is a line saying convergence-experience.com. My husband said, you should have a conference. So I am having what I'm considering the initial conference where I'm going to gather information. I'm going to do the right thing this year, this fall, 1 month from today. And then next year, I'm going to have all year to do this thing right. So I'm doing the right thing now, doing this thing right. So it's going to be right across the street there, at the hotel right down the street at the Civic Center. But that's how you can learn more about it. I have 2 books out. Go to agingbetternetwork.com. So as of this morning, I have 2 paperback books that could be helpful for much of what we've been talking about today. So Susan, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, first I wanted to ask Christine, where are you located? I forgot.
Independence, Oregon. So if you're familiar with Oregon, you might know that Portland is right up at the top, and we're down about an hour from there near Salem.
Nice. So basically my website is the easiest thing to remember. It's just readingtoconnectwith2.com. And it's a simple website. It's just, it just has kind of the basics. To get more details and stuff, you could just contact us through the website. You can also email at info info@readingtoconnect.com. Another way. And happy to give lots of information about what we offer. And then I have a LinkedIn page that tells more about what's going on currently.
Awesome. Info at readingtoconnect.com.
Correct. That's the email they can use. Or they can email me through the website, the contact page.
Fantastic. Brittany.
Yeah, so I think the best way is to also look at my website. It's B as in Brittany, Lamb as in sheep, MD .com. So blambmd.com. And my blog is there, and then links to I have a free audio training that I do. It's the 5 steps that anyone who's making medical decisions on behalf of a person living with dementia should really make sure that they've checked off. And so that's on there. And then my information about my course is there. And if you want to email me about networking or connecting, I like to speak to support groups. I like to speak and teach online. I do some of that virtually. You can send me an email. It's blambmd@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Nancy.
So there are a couple of different ways to reach me. You can go on Facebook and to Caremanity, the Facebook group, or the page that I've got. It's also Nancy May on Facebook. And on LinkedIn, if you want to reach me directly through the podcast, go to eldersuccess.live and connect with me. And we now have a YouTube channel, also Elder Care Success, so you can connect with me on that too. So
And was that Elder Care Success .live?
.live, yes, because everything is better when you're alive, not dead.
So you want live?
You
prefer to get messages or interactions with live people. So we've got that clarified. Okay.
Well, that may be some difference. I don't know.
And Crystal, you are going to finish us off with some good brain healthy things to remember. And I know you do this for grown-ups, but I'm just really excited about the starting young part of it.
Keeping an open mind can flex you in many different ways, but with the mission to share brain care for all, you can find us simply at virtualbrainhealthcenter.com. We have a blog, we have infographics, podcasts coming out. We really want to work with other people in our field and industry to give away brain health. It's not something expensive that you have to buy. It's typically a shift of your time and your energy. And so we're on a mission to share that. We do programs. We have a new one coming up, teaching a dementia self-management program for people early stage diagnosis, about 2 years, to learn about how to implement brain health as well for them on their journey. So we really look at all the different ways we can share brain care for all of us. So I hope there may be something that can be of value to anyone tuning in on our website.
There's always that comment, I wish I had known this back when I had, for my loved one. It's here, it's coming out now. People keep getting so excited going, wow, this has really catapulted just awareness of age-related situations, but it can help at any age to know that these resources exist, whether you're a sandwich generation, whether you're experiencing things in your 40s and 50s that you thought weren't going to happen until you were in your 70s, 80s. All of this is so important. Each one of you is so important. Thank you so much for sculpting this moment, coming together. I'm glad you know each other. I'm really grateful that the people in the chat column said, hey, this is important. I need that, make sure you get a hold of me, et cetera, et cetera. I love it. Collaborations happening live on screen. None of you were given scripts. You just showed up. I'm so grateful. I will invite you to the reunion, it's many months down the road. There's a reunion coming up for people who have been part of this Aging Better Network live stream. That one's coming up in later in October. So I'll invite you back, and you can let us know if there's an update or how that book is doing, or whether you've added a new part, or if you've interacted with any of the people that were in the chat column today, and how that has unfolded. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm just going to wave goodbye. Get on with your busy lives. I'm just so grateful that you came. Thank you so much, ladies. Bye-bye.
Thank you.